Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into the pretty fascinating world of alleged time travelers and also the stories around supposed time travel tech.
Right. It's a topic that really grabs people.
It does. Now, we should say up front, a lot of these tales, maybe most, have been pretty thoroughly debunked. They often fall into that urban legend category.
Definitely. So our mission today isn't really to argue if time travel is possible or not.
No, not at all. We want to explore these stories, look at the evidence or, the lack of it sometimes,
Hmm.
and figure out why they're so captivating.
Exactly. Why do these ideas stick? We've looked at quite a range of sources, old stories, news clips, online chatter, even a book.
Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with an early one.
Yeah, let's look at Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain. They're quite an interesting case.
Right, they published that book, An Adventure, back in 1911, under different names, though.
They did, pseudonyms. And in it, they described this really odd experience they had at the Petit Trianon in Versailles.
They thought they saw ghosts, didn't they? Like Marie Antoinette.
That was the claim. They felt like they'd slipped back in time, maybe to the French Revolution era. What's key here, I think, is how subjective it all was. Their perception may be influenced by history, by romance.
Yeah, interpreting a strange feeling as something extraordinary.
Precisely.
And the book caused a real sensation, but also a lot of ridicule, right?
Oh, absolutely. Both intrigue and skepticism.
Yeah.
It kind of sets the stage for how personal experience can turn into these grand time slip narratives.
It really does. Okay, let's jump forward quite a bit, almost a century, to something very different. The Chaplin's Time Traveler.
Ah, yes. The YouTube video. George Clark, 2010.
He was looking at bonus footage from Chaplin's The Circus premiere in 1928,
And he spots this figure, a woman, walking in the background.
holding something to her ear.
Exactly, holding something to her ear that looked, well, a lot like a mobile phone. And she seemed to be talking.
That grainy footage just exploded online.
It really did. This is a great example of pareidolia,
Hmm.
seeing familiar shapes. We see a modern object because we know modern objects.
Millions of views, news picked it up. Everyone's talking about it.
But then more rational explanations started popping up.
Right, like what? Hearing aids.
Yeah, Nicholas Jackson suggested a portable hearing aid they were around, developing back then.
Okay.
Philip Skruska thought maybe a rectangular ear trumpet, another possibility.
Right, those older hearing devices.
And Michael Sheridan mentioned the Acousticon specifically, an early hearing aid brand.
So probably not a time traveler phoning home.
Probably just early tech that looks familiar to us now. It shows how we project our world onto the past.
Definitely. Okay, another visual puzzle next. The hipster at the bridge opening.
Oh yeah, the 1941 photo from British Columbia, Goldbridge.
This one's great because the guy just looks so modern.
He does. People looked at the photo and immediately flagged his sunglasses, what looked like a printed t-shirt, maybe a small camera.
Things that just scream not 1940s to our eyes.
Exactly. It's like our visual shorthand for different decades gets triggered.
But when you actually dig into it,
The picture changes. Those sunglasses.
Mhm.
The style was actually around in the 20s and 30s, so not impossible for 1941.
okay, that makes sense. What about the shirt?
It looks more like a sweater, really, with a sewn-on emblem, maybe a sports team logo. Some suggested the Montreal Maroons hockey team. Very common style then.
Not a graphic tee then. And the camera.
Kodak had smaller, portable cameras out by 1938. So, again, plausible.
So another case of mistaken identity based on modern assumptions.
Pretty much. It became a case study, actually, in how these things go viral online. Misinterpretation spreads fast.
Right. Okay. Sticking with photos, there was one from a beach in 1943.
Yes, Tolan Beach in Cornwall. Someone uploaded it to Twitter in 2018.
And the claim was someone was using a mobile device.
That's what some people saw, yeah. A figure bent over, fiddling with something that looked like a phone.
Yeah.
Global media attention again.
But the person who shared the photo had a different idea.
He did. Stuart Humphreys, the uploader, pretty much shot down the time travel idea straight away.
What did he think it was?
He suggested the guy was probably just rolling a cigarette,
Yeah.
which is, a lot more likely for 1943.
Occam's razor, right. The simplest explanation.
Often the best one.
Okay, let's shift from photos to more narrative legends. Rudolph Fentz.
Ah, the classic urban legend. Man in 19th century clothes suddenly appears in Times Square in 1951,
Gets hit by a car.
and they find items on him from 1876. Coins, letters.
Perfect man out of time story. Where did that actually come from?
Well, folklorist Chris Aubeck did some digging. He traced it back not to a real event, but to fiction. First, a 1951 short story called I'm Scared.
Okay.
Then elements seem to have been borrowed for a science fiction anthology story in 1953 called A Voice from the Gallery.
So Fence was likely never real, just a character.
It seems that way. A story that got repeated so often, people started believing it was true. Fiction bleeding into perceived fact.
Happens all the time. Okay, now for someone slightly more contemporary. Mike Madman Markham.
Oh, Markham. A coast-to-coast AM favorite back in the day.
He called in 1995 saying he'd built a time machine using what, a Jacob's ladder.
Yeah, a modified Jacob's ladder. He claimed it worked, but his experiments got him into trouble.
He stole power transformers, didn't he? Caused a blackout.
That's the story. Got arrested for it. Adds a bit of real-world drama to the tale.
Did he stop there?
Nope. He called Art Bell again in '96, said he was building a better machine, claimed he'd sent objects, even animals, through time.
Wow. Okay.
Then he said he was going to go himself,
Yeah.
and then he just, well, vanished in 1997.
Which obviously fueled the legend. The time traveler disappears.
Exactly. But then,
He resurfaced.
much later, Art Bell interviewed him again in 2015.
And what was his story then?
He claimed he had traveled, went 2 years into the future, ended up like 800 miles away, totally lost his memory.
Amnesia.
Yeah. Said he eventually got his memory back while living in a homeless shelter. It's quite a narrative.
It is. But any proof? Was he ever officially missing?
That's the thing. The Missouri State Highway Patrol apparently had no missing person report for him during that time he was supposedly gone.
So it's really just his word for it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
A fascinating story, but lacking that external proof.
Right. Okay, let's talk about maybe the most famous internet time traveler legend, John Teeter.
Peter popped up on online bulletin boards around 2000, 2001.
Claiming to be from the future?
From 2036, yeah. Said he was a soldier on a military mission back to 1975, actually, to get an old IBM computer. But he stopped off in 2000 for personal reasons.
And he had explanations for paradoxes and things.
He did. He talked about the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, multiple timelines, so his presence wouldn't change his future.
Which sounds sciencey, gives it a bit more weight for some people.
Definitely. And he made predictions, big ones.
Like the U.S. Civil War.
Yeah, predicted a civil war starting around 2004, escalating by 2008, and then a nuclear World War III in 2015. Billions dead.
Which clearly didn't happen.
No. And as those dates passed, his credibility, well, it plummeted.
So what's the consensus now? A hoax?
Investigations suggest it was likely a hoax, possibly carried out by a couple of siblings from Florida.
But the story itself just took off, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It had a huge cultural impact, especially online. Books, plays, even inspired the anime Steins Gate. It shows how a well-told story can really resonate, even if it's not true.
A real fixture of early internet lore. Okay, now for something stranger. The Bob White emails.
Oh, this was bizarre. Early 2000s, loads of spam emails started appearing.
Spam about time travel.
Yeah, someone using names like Bob White or Tim Jones asking for help finding a dimensional warp generator.
Seriously.
Seriously. Sometimes the story was they were stuck in 2003. Other times just looking for parts from other time travelers. Very weird.
Did people reply?
They did, mostly jokingly, offering fake parts, suggesting time travel courses. Someone even set up a fake online store where Bob supposedly bought a bogus warp generator.
That's hilarious. Who was actually sending these?
It eventually came out it was a guy named Robert J. Tadino, a known spammer, but apparently
He actually believed it.
it seems so. Reports suggest he had been diagnosed with dissociative disorder and schizophrenia, so he genuinely thought he was a time traveler.
Wow. That adds a whole different layer to it. Less of a prank, more something else.
Yeah. It even got referenced in a song by Groovely. Kind of a strange intersection of mental health, online culture, and these fringe beliefs.
Definitely. Okay, next up, a story that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. Andrew Carlson.
Right. The supposed stock market genius from the future.
The story broke in 2003. He gets arrested by the SEC.
For insider trading, yeah. Because he'd apparently turned just $800 into over $350 million in like 2 weeks, making incredibly risky trades that all paid off.
And his explanation was?
He confessed, said he was from 200 years in the future and just knew which stocks would go up.
That's quite a defense. Did he offer anything else?
Supposedly, yes. Offered to reveal where bin Laden was, the cure for AIDS.
Big claims.
Huge. All he wanted was leniency and a trip back to his timecraft.
And then he just vanished.
That's the legend. Someone anonymously paid his $1 million bail. He walked out and disappeared. Records supposedly showed he never even existed before his arrest.
It sounds way too dramatic to be real.
And it probably wasn't. The most likely source for this story seems to be the Weekly World News.
Ah, the satirical tabloid.
Exactly. It looks like they ran it as fiction and then other outlets picked it up and reported it as fact. It just spread.
A classic case of satire being mistaken for news. Okay, how about Håkan Nordqvist, the guy at the sink?
Ah, the Swedish plumber. 2006, this video appears online.
He's fixing his kitchen sink.
And somehow crawls through the cabinet and ends up in the future. 2046.
Right. And he meets his future self.
His 70-year-old self, yeah.
Yeah.
He even claimed to have a photo of them together, showing matching tattoos as proof.
That's pretty detailed evidence.
It seemed convincing.
But it was a twist.
Big twist. The whole thing, video, story, photo, it was all a marketing campaign. An insurance company, AMF in Sweden. A very clever, if maybe slightly deceptive advert.
Wow. You have to admire the creativity, I guess. Okay,
Yeah.
one last traveler, the iPhone in the 1860 painting.
Yes. Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller's painting, The Expected, from 1860.
And online, people started saying the woman in it is looking at an iPhone.
You can sort of see why in a blurry image. She's holding a small, dark, rectangular object and looking down at it intently.
But art experts stepped in.
Quickly, they pointed out it's almost certainly a prayer book or a small hymnal, very common for the time, depicted often in paintings.
So another case of seeing modern tech where it isn't.
Exactly, projecting our world onto the past again.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of alleged travelers. What about the tech itself? Briefly, there's Die Glocke.
Yeah, the supposed Nazi Wunderwaffe, a bell-shaped time machine. It's deep in conspiracy theory territory, really lacks credible evidence. Interesting footnote, though.
Right. More substantial, perhaps, was Pellegrino Ernetti and his chronovisor.
Ernetti, the Italian monk, he claimed he'd built a device, the chronovisor, that could essentially tune into past events, like a time TV.
Viewing the past. Even filming it.
He claimed he could capture images, though apparently without sound. His big claims were photographing the crucifixion. Wow. And viewing ancient Rome, even seeing a lost play performed.
Extraordinary claims. Any proof?
Well, the photo of Christ was pretty thoroughly debunked. It turned out to be just a reversed image of a known postcard of a wood carving.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there were doubts about his other evidence, like the transcription of the lost play Thyestes. Some even say he confessed it was a hoax on his deathbed.
So likely fabricated. What about the Iranian time machine? That was more recent.
Very brief. 2013, the Fars news agency in Iran reported a scientist had invented a machine that could predict the future, essentially see forward a few years.
But that story didn't last long.
No, it was pulled very quickly. An Iranian government official then denied it ever existed. A strange little blip.
Very strange. Okay, finally, the big ones in conspiracy lore. The Philadelphia experiment and Montauk.
Right. The Philadelphia experiment legend centers on the USS Eldridge in 1943. Supposedly, the Navy was trying to make it invisible using electromagnetic fields.
And time travel got mixed in.
The original story was mostly invisibility, but later versions, especially in books and movies, added time travel elements, like the ship jumping forward briefly.
But the Navy denies it.
Flat out denies it. They say no such experiment happened, and the details conflate with known physics and the ship's actual history. Widely considered a hoax.
And Montauk?
The Montauk Project is kind of an outgrowth of the Philadelphia stories. Alleged secret experiments on Long Island involving mind control, teleportation, and, yes, more time travel. Even less evidence for this, really deep into speculative fiction territory.
So a lot of stories, not a lot of solid proof for any of them.
That seems to be the pattern.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, looking back at all these stories, Moberly and Jourdain, Chaplin's footage, Teeter, Carlson, the chronovisor, what are the common threads?
Well, you definitely see recurring themes. Misinterpreting things is a big one. Seeing modern phones in old photos or paintings.
Right, applying our context anachronistically.
Exactly. Then there are clear hoaxes, done for attention, maybe money, or even marketing, like the Nordqvist case.
The power suggestion seems strong too. Someone tells a compelling story.
And it takes root. Plus, there's just this underlying, very human fascination with the idea itself. Escaping time, fixing the past, seeing the future.
It's a powerful blend, isn't it? Bits of real history, maybe, mixed with pure fiction, wishful thinking.
All fueling these urban legends that just refuse to die.
Yeah. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. After hearing about all these debunked claims, these hoaxes, these misinterpretations.
What does it really tell us about ourselves?
Yeah.
about that deep-seated desire to maybe break free from the present or get a sneak peek at what's coming.
And why do certain stories, even without proof, resonate so powerfully? Why do we want to believe them? Something to think about.